After 2.5 years and over 150 episodes, I am officially launching a new chapter of this podcast. If you followed me for any of that time, what you're about to hear is going to feel a bit different because where I am today is genuinely different from where I started. My name is Andrea and I. Over the last 7 years, my wife Andrea and I built a real estate portfolio across 3 states from scratch while working full-time jobs, moving across the country twice, and bringing 3 beautiful young kids into the world. Despite this being the most hectic stage of our lives to date, we were able to methodically build our business on the side of our day jobs by taking small, consistent, and meaningful action every day over a long period of time. We had our share of missteps. We stayed in motion even when the path wasn't clear, and somewhere in the middle of it all, we figured out what we were actually building toward, which is ownership. We built quietly in parallel until our corporate day jobs became a choice instead of a requirement. That's what the last 7 years taught us, and that's what Own Your Upside is here to share with you. So without further ado, let's get into it with the new show. So first of all, who is this show for? Well, if you're anything like us, you feel like you're doing everything right. You probably have a good, consistent, stable income. You have some momentum in your career and some accomplishments that you're proud of. You might even own an investment property or two, or at a minimum have some investments in retirement accounts. By every external measure, you look and probably feel successful. And you are. You have a lot to be proud of. But you're starting to see a gap and do some math, and certain things are not quite adding up the way they used to. The trajectory you're on might not close the gap you have between where you are and where you truly want to be. And unless you acknowledge that, it's going to be difficult to do anything about it. You are not doing anything reckless. You are not here to try and blow up a life that you've carefully built for yourself. You're not looking for a silver bullet or a shortcut. But what you are looking for is a way to apply your capabilities and your high performer mentality into a direction where you can truly capture the value that you are creating in the world. How will this show come out? So this is not meant to be a purely tactical show. It is not meant to be a purely mindset show. This is meant to show real situations, either from my experience or other people in my network, on how they themselves built slowly and methodically the types of businesses that they can sustain for decades to come. So that will be solo episodes sharing my experience or Andrea's. That'll be bringing in outside guests that are people that I've met that have incredible stories to tell, and also a mix of solo episodes with some of the frameworks and tactics that have helped me move forward in my journey. But every single thing will be under the premise of providing you tools and inspiration you need to build in parallel in your own life to make sure you close that gap so that you are able to get to where you want to go. I will also be sharing a real-time documentation of Andrea and I building Everwood Reserve, which is our $10 million ground-up development project where we will run an assisted living and memory care business. We will not focus exclusively on assisted living in this podcast. However, there are a lot of parallels from the story of how we're building that business that will be important for you as you are working to build your own passionate income in your life. Most of you, myself included up until very recently, are playing a game that was never designed to actually make you wealthy. I have one question that I think illustrates this very well. If you got a 3% raise this year, which is the standard cost of living increase in most companies, did you actually get ahead? If you're like me, we had 3 kids in 25 months, which introduced new costs like daycare, increased housing, new insurance costs, things like that that absolutely, unequivocally exceed that 3% cost of living raise per year. The standard increase in wages is not built to keep up with not only inflation and the cost of living, but certainly not built to get you ahead or build any type of advantage in building wealth. So this premise is what I challenge in this show the most. But don't let any of what I just said make you think that I believe that W-2s are a villain. As a matter of fact, I believe the W-2 and the day job that most people have is one of their greatest assets. This leads to another very important core idea of Own Your Upside, and that is that life is not linear. If you're anything like me, when you first started out in real estate, you probably downloaded some spreadsheets that allowed you to financially model, hey, if I buy 1 property per year for the next 10 years and then I hold them for the next 30 years, it'll get me to every financial goal I've ever wanted, right? Right? Technically, on a financial model, that can look true. But what it fails to account for are major life events. I mentioned earlier multiple times, we had 3 children in 25 months. And if you're doing the math, yes, that includes a set of twins. 3 kids in 25 months. We moved across the country twice. COVID, a black swan pandemic event, wiped out my 10-year career in the concerts industry overnight. and forced me to go find a new career. These things all happened, many of which were maybe somewhat expected at best, but a lot of it was not expected, and the majority of it was largely out of our control. But these events fundamentally changed the financial equation we were trying to solve. All of our freedom numbers, all of our personal finance budgeting went pretty much out the window. We went from dual income, no kids, living in a low cost of living market, to all of a sudden having one primary income and multiple children, mouths to feed. Daycare costs were going to be about $7,400 a month for 3 children in Washington State, where we lived before. So we ended up moving across the country to solve for these very specific pain points we had, many of which were unexpected. Long way of saying that if you think a financial model can show you the next 20 to 30 years of your life, it can give you a directional idea, but it absolutely cannot account for all of the dynamic nature of life and the different things that can happen. So within that, there has to be a certain degree of flexibility and a pretty constant iteration. You need to set bold goals and set specific goals, but also constantly look at them and make sure that they are factored into what your current life can actually sustain. So this is part of the overall framework of creating specific yet flexible pathways towards success. So along the lines of setting specific goals, I want to share one of the most important things I ever did, which is set a vivid vision. So I joined a group called Action Academy. It's a fantastic mastermind group. And one of the first things they have you do in their onboarding is write a vivid vision. This is actually not a particularly easy exercise if you've never done it before, but man, oh man, is it powerful. The idea is it's based on a book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. And you set a vision 3 years into the future. You pick a specific day and you describe in vivid detail. So I sat down on October 5th, 2023, which was my 34th birthday, and I cast a vision for what I wanted my life to look like on my 37th birthday. It wasn't a specific list of goals, but it was an actual narrative of how I wanted to feel. So what's really interesting about this is that in 2023, I wrote that vision. I published it on every forum I had available while I was still working full time. And I shared it with every family member, every friend that I had a relationship with. The reason I'm sharing that with you is that almost 3 years later, when I look back at that vivid vision, every single one of the major items that I wrote down is set to come true or already has. But the path to get there was completely different. Originally, I had an idea of scaling my podcast and my media business solo. I didn't have residential assisted living baked into any of the numbers I used in my vivid vision. Obviously, since then, I have made major shifts and now I'm completely all in on residential assisted living. And that has guided us to the next chapter of our life. So even though directionally the vivid vision helped me set where I wanted to go, it turns out that the vehicle for getting there was completely different than what I expected. But had I not set that vision in the first place, I wouldn't even know what I'm aiming towards, let alone the vehicle to get there. So the next piece I'm going to talk about is why this shift, what has changed in my perspective specifically that enables this show to change direction. We are very proud of what we built. We had 8 cash flowing rental properties across 3 states. We were bringing in over $18,000 a month in gross rent and netting a comfortable $5,000 a month after all expenses and allocations. This is a portfolio that we are very proud of, and it's one that I think hopefully anybody would be proud of. Those are real life-changing numbers. However, it was not enough to sustain a family of 5 over the next 18 years of their childhood. We don't want to be super pinched while our kids are young. We actually want the opposite. We would like the majority of our financial abundance and flexibility to come during the window of time where our children are between the ages of 5 and 12, because that's when they actually want to spend time with us and before they get too cool and get their own friends and don't want to see us anymore. So our portfolio was not actually serving the objectives that we had. Most of our money and our equity was trapped in the homes. We had a lot of home equity and paper net worth, but it wasn't accessible. So we ended up having to actually blow up a good portion of that portfolio to enable the business that we're building now. This was very hard because if you've built anything that you're proud of in the past, it's pretty dang hard to tear it down to the studs when it's technically working for some objectives. But those objectives no longer matched our goals. So we made a deliberate decision. We sold off a few of the higher equity properties. We did pay some taxes in areas where we might not have previously wanted to, but we were able to reinvest that money into the 2 luxury assisted living buildings that we're developing. And that business, if it succeeds and does even as well as we projected, it will solve every financial goal we've ever had. So that initial portfolio and aligning it behind what the true goals we had for this next chapter of our life was a very important reshuffle. And the last concept, which really truly does underpin everything, is this idea of the parallel build. 4 years ago, I didn't start any of the online content creating. I didn't have a podcast. I didn't have, assets and templates for all different parts of my business. I didn't have any of it. I had a day job and I had a desire to do something that was a little bit more meaningful than what I was able to do if I was only working a day job. And so I took all that desire and all the initial learning curve and chunked it out piece by piece instead of just sprinting for 2 months straight and then forgetting all about it and getting exhausted and moving on. I tried to build a sustainable rhythm for myself where I could do this over years and years and years. And in my case, what that looks like is a system I call the 20-minute investor, where once we backed out the amount of time we needed for family, for health, for day jobs, et cetera, we found that we only genuinely had about 20 minutes per day to actually work on this business. The compounding effect that taking small, consistent action over a long period of time can have is truly astonishing. The majority of what we've done has been in small chunks of time. It has not been in long, deep focus sessions. And that should be a lesson for everyone listening, because you do not need as much time as you think you do. You need focus, you need clarity on what it is you're pursuing, and you need some degree of discipline that you can actually work this in to be a part of your identity and not just something that you do when you feel like it. If any of this resonates with you, I really appreciate you being a listener to the show. I am also writing a book of the same title, Own Your Upside. That is slated to release in 2027. It's going to have everything we talk about on the show, everything I've learned in this entire journey thus far, both in our single family business all the way up through the current development project and the future business we're going to run. It's going to be a weekly Substack of the same name, ownyourupside.substack.com if you want to subscribe. And I have a whole lot of accompanying assets that are going to come out in the months and hopefully year to come. So if you enjoyed this show, I cannot wait to learn more about your parallel build. Please feel free to reach out to me directly at aaron@aaronamin.com with any thoughts you have, feedback. I'm here for you, and I'm excited for where this show is going to go next.